You already know we have to talk about this trash pile of a video, mainly because it's been making the rounds on Twitter for being incredibly bad faith and disingenuous, which it is by the way. But before we get into that, you know I have to make my wannabe intellectual superior than thou introduction to set the mood and standard of this video. I'm kidding, but I will be taking a page out of this person's book, and by extension, other breadtubers' books, and talk about some completely irrelevant nonsense for the first couple of minutes. An overarching comparison I'm going to be making right off the bat will include a callback to my Ethan is Online video. In that video, I took the time to thoroughly dissect and deconstruct Ethan's not so well hidden paradoxical behavior, where he tries to be a virtuous, open-minded, and intellectual individual, but at every turn, he does something that is antithetical to the facade he tries to play. For example, Ethan tries to present this open-minded, pro-whatever sort of personality. He expects his presentations to be taken seriously, but then does the complete opposite by either misrepresenting someone, insinuating terrible accusations, dog whistling, or even vice signaling, and even goes as far as to misrepresent information for his convenience. The reason this is relevant will become more apparent as this video goes on, but for now, let me just explain something. These are the same things that Ethan and other breadtubers and left-leaning political internet celebrities will bark at in regards to people with opposing views, but then turn around and do a worse example of it. And I will be elaborating, something that these people typically don't do. Leftists hate it when pedophiles are called out within certain communities, because it can misrepresent LGBTQ people for whatever convoluted brain gymnastics reasons they may have. Yet, despite that, people like Ethan will turn around and insinuate or outright claim that someone is a pedophile, with no actual evidence or rational line of logic. It's not hard to see why that's an issue, right? Pointless introduction to pad my video with pretentious craft and personal gripes aside, that's actually going to be my first criticism. This is something that I find to be a common trend with a lot of these sorts of lefty political creators. They form a concept, they start writing down ideas, collecting sources and references for their ideas, and then start working on a proof of concept. In this case, what appears to be a review of bad conservative horror movies, whatever that's supposed to mean. But instead of executing the project with a hook that leads into the main topic of conversation, what your thumbnail sort of, not really, and title literally suggest, they start going on pointless monologues that either vaguely connects to the theme of the video or don't relate to the video in any way at all. For the introduction of this video, he spends literally 12 whole minutes complaining about his personal experience with a convention that he went to, where a majority of the complaints were either first world problems or non-issues that only an entitled and stuck-up individual would complain about.
First of all, I arrived to the convention and their small main parking lot was already filled, and they gave me directions to their overflow parking area that upon arrival I realized was well over half a mile away from the event, and that they had arranged no shuttle services whatsoever, meaning that I had to walk down a dirt trail that had large rocks in it in the February cold to get back to their main building, which, was fine for me. I'm in relatively good health, but you can't expect all guests who want to attend your public event to be able to physically do that. At night, I then had to walk the same trail back to my car in pitch black darkness, which is just a lawsuit waiting to happen. I'm not someone to ever actually make a complaint about something like that, but the reality of the situation is that not providing shuttle services to guests who can't walk when you make them park so far away immediately makes you seem totally unprofessional.
12 minutes before he even gets to a slight reference of what his video's thesis was going to be about. And even then, it was still vague whining and crying about how he went to a convention that was hosted and attended by individuals he doesn't agree with. I'm not sure if these people have ever passed a writing assignment in their lives, because every teacher I had in middle school would have failed me for having such irrelevant and pointless discussion for the first few paragraphs of my presentation or discussion. Oh wait, it looks like the audience decided your grade for me. And further on to that, when he actually does get to explaining his thesis, if you could call it that, this starts to make a lot more sense.
In my personal opinion, he is a deeply unserious critic and can actually be, to an extent, a symbol of what I want the message of this video to be about. Because if you watched his video about Mad Monster Con, you would think it was a great time. A wonderful convention. There is a clear dichotomy between our two experiences, and this ties into this theory that I've had for a long time that is kind of the thesis of this video, and that I think there's actually not one, but two distinct horror communities. One that is more concerned with writing and thinking about how our own experiences and world are reflected through art. A group that overall is less concerned with how much a movie makes at the box office and more with what it is trying to say as a work of art, and how it relates to ourselves and culture as people. And then you have another that is more conservative and traditionally capital A American, and is based more in basic consumerism, and viewing movies strictly as entertainment and nothing else. A group that often gets angry at the very notion of subtext existing within a work of fiction, and views art not as a means to express what it means to exist, but instead that sees the value of creation just within the context of how fun and experience that product is. business, as this side of horror is obsessed with money and defending companies, and even when putting on a mask of pretending to be left-leaning, everything that they do is in the service of capital and big business. I hate to put it in terms like this, but I think deep within the heart of horror at the moment, and the country as a whole, there's a problem of anti-intellectualism raging at people who want art to be more. A group of people yelling, just let people enjoy things, while the other side argues that we can do better, we can be more, which is something we are going to get to soon, so just bear with me here. I know this is a long video.
One that is more concerned with writing and thinking about how our own experiences are reflected through art. So you don't really care about writing. People who make this claim about themselves, especially in such a snobbish and pretentious fashion, don't typically actually care about writing, because they don't actually have any self-awareness. They only care about shit being slathered on paper until it says or presents enough key-jingling ideas or representations that fit their ideals. And by key-jingling ideas and representations, I do not mean things such as racial inclusion. I just mean things that to them seems like some super fancy, artistic, groundbreaking concept, but actually it's just some dog shit, like those bad, deep poems emos used to write back in 2013. You know, like how kids will come up to you and say, look at this, and then proceed to do the dumbest spin ever. They think that what they're doing is badass and cool, but in reality, it's just silly nonsense. That's the type of personalities that these individuals have, and the way he goes on to completely condescend the group he doesn't align with and treat them as if they were some cavemen that are only interested in flashing lights and sounds is also very telling. The way he puts himself in a group and describes it in this grandiose fashion is telling. It shows that you won't even consider the possibility that people you don't agree with are capable of forming educated, rational, and structured opinions or taste. You signaled as to what type of person you were before even getting to the horrifying part of this video, presenting yourself as this super in touch with art, classy individual, but the truth is more horrifying than the lie. You know what, that's actually kind of foreshadowing. Maybe this dude is a good writer, because all good horror-inducing films have to have some great foreshadowing, right? I'm joking, this dude sucks. Okay, let's cut to the chase. I'm going to be very blunt. I'm not dissecting this entire video for hours on end to tear into this guy. I would basically just be recreating my Ethan is Online video with another equally backwards breadtube clone. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of these people end up being the exact same person anyways, with just different clothes and hairstyles and also facial features. In complement to that video, however, I will just be pointing out what made me come to the conclusion that this individual was just as bad. Matter of fact, he might be worse the more I started digging into this video. During chapter 4 of this video, around the 2-hour and 45-minute mark, this pretentious moron straight up calls Wendigoon out for not being a wholesome creator, the way everyone perceives him to be, keyword perceives. Even going as far as to say that others should not give him that perception in the first place, stating that, like many Christians, he probably has a lot to hide.
If you're not aware, Wendigoon is a horror conspiracy theorist YouTuber with several million subscribers that, as you will hopefully come to see, should not be seen as the wholesome, southern-friendly dad persona that he has publicly constructed around himself in the past several years. And that, like many people who talk about being Christians as much as he does, has a dark past with deep ties to far-right extremism.
First, I want to say, why the fuck would you insinuate anything like this? Why would you, honest to God, keep in mind I'm not religious and really don't care about the Christian faith, or any faith for that matter, why is this a point of contention that you would even hypothetically bring up? Why would you even bring up the hypothetical that Wendigoon has probably done terrible things and it's best to assume he has? Just because you guys hold different views and opinions? You know what, I'm not even going to beat around the bush. I'm going to put my dick on the table right now and just say what we are all thinking and what everybody wants to hear.
On a base level, his work has never been of personal interest to me. We share a similar focus on topics that we like to write about, but our similarities basically end there. I have no need or desire to hear 5 hours of opinions on Blood Meridian from a 21-year-old millionaire who got famous around the age of 19. And I know that is probably the most boomer thing that I've ever said. Apologies for that. But I say that to argue that I really do think that there are some works that are really not intended to hit the right way until we are older. There are some works that fundamentally will not be understood by you if you are wealthy and have always been upper class your entire life. And this may all sound condescending, but that doesn't stop it from being somewhat true. I don't mean that to think that you shouldn't be able to say or publish whatever you like at any point in your life. You're obviously free to do so. And I also don't want it to be seen as if I'm talking down to young people, because I'm not. Politically, they are frequently the most with it, and their voices should be heard on issues that pertain to them. They are looked down upon too often in our culture. What I'm talking about here pertains to the very act of writing itself, and with that, perspective. And I don't know if you can actually really truly be a good cultural critic with a voice that has a definitive perspective, without several years of genuine, independent, lived experience away from the home that you were raised in. And in his case, he became exceptionally wealthy by the time that he was 19 or 20. And so if you leave the home and immediately become famous and rich, without having to ever actually truly struggle, can you be considered to have ever actually had lived experience at all that would qualify you to give criticism on works of art about the experience of average and poor people? I would argue not. And if that is the case, why would your perspective matter as a critic? Not to mention the fact that Wendigoon was raised in a very wealthy family, and with that comes from a wealthy perspective.
This entire segment comes off as extremely envious, as if he had something to prove, as if he wanted to be in the spotlight for the same reasons that Wendigoon is, making statements such as, his work has never been of personal interest to me. We share similar focus on topics that we like to write about, but our similarities basically end there. And then dogging on him for being a millionaire at the ripe age of 21 but got famous at 19? Why is that important? Why is that relevant? Oh wait, it's because you're jealous, because that's not you. It's because you feel that you are entitled to that glamour and fortune. He spends 3 minutes complaining about how this dude has always been rich, got rich young, and talks shit about how he's too young and doesn't have enough life experience to have an opinion on the things he talks about. Like, who made you the arbiter? Who made you the person that is in charge of deciding whether people are capable or even credible enough to be talking about certain things or not? Especially in relation to horror, especially in relation to films and arts and creations, which is entirely up to anybody's understanding. It's entirely up to anybody's perception. It's incredibly disgusting on a writing and journalistic level that you would even say anything like this.
I think his videos are very uninteresting, but ultimately that is secondary to what makes him worth talking about. The first of which are the very strong beliefs that he seems to hold as important, that are in my opinion the antithesis of what horror should be about. There are many things that are red flags that we could talk about, from the bizarre gun ownership, the flagrant use from my perspective, of his religion as a shield from criticism, to the belief that he at one point followed many far-right accounts on Twitter, from Kyle Rittenhouse to Parler, the social media website where the January 6th insurrection was in part planned. People said, oh, he only followed them, but that doesn't mean that he agrees with them. But there are screenshots of tweets that may have been deleted, that clearly in my mind show a support to Rittenhouse. Although, since I did not take these screenshots, they do have to be taken with a grain of salt. But in relation to everything else that we're going to talk about here, to me it seems to fall in line with his general beliefs.
The funniest part is that he criticizes Wendigoon's writing as subpar when he himself is absolutely dog shit at writing and doing research. He criticizes Wendigoon for using Christianity as a shield for criticism, yet there is not a valid example of this circulating. Then he starts talking down on him for following Kyle Rittenhouse, who, by the way, despite me not being political by any means, is innocent in that situation, 100%. I stand firm on that. Anyone who disagrees, you are more than free to check out. Also, you have the audacity to insinuate that Wendigoon supported the January 6th insurrection by using vague deleted tweets in regards to Rittenhouse and Parler. You may not have said it outright, but the insinuation is there, again, over tweets you claim may or may not exist. Wow, dude, you're such a great writer, and totally not reaching for proof that isn't there. The absolute mental gymnastics on this guy. I don't even have to mention his attempt to frame and lambast Wendigoon as the creator of an alt-right organization when that could be further from the case. He claims to use Wendigoon's own post to claim that Wendigoon admitted to this, but the thing is that that's just what he wants other people to think. That's what this moron wants you to think. He hopes you don't actually read the post and then hides behind a casual take that as you will. Like, no, moron, you don't just make claims like this and not back it up. Matter of fact, he reads it and then shortly after starts showing isolated incidents in regards to people that adopted the name in an attempt to try to make Wendigoon seem responsible for these actions, not what Wendigoon represents or what he represented, all in an attempt to smear Wendigoon as being responsible for this. And I find it incredibly ironic that he does this because he also complains about conservative doublespeak while using manipulative tactics and imagery for confirmation bias.
We could talk about his past and supposedly being a founding member in an online conspiracy theory group that, according to him, snowballed out of control into being a white supremacist neo-Nazi organization called the Boogaloo Boys. His online username at the time was Boogaloo Boy, and he claims to be the first to have started using it, but that he left the group and became Wendigoon after things started to get out of hand. And this is not a conspiracy theory in itself. Shockingly, he literally has said so in writing. As you'll see, he was just like, oh geez, sorry guys, about starting a violent hate group guys. Sorry that people got killed. I totally didn't mean to do all that. My bad. I'll do better next time. Also, it should be noted that the Boogaloo Boys are known for wearing Hawaiian shirts. And guess who else always has on a Hawaiian shirt? Despite the fact that he publicly totally does not share in their beliefs, guys. I'm just saying that if at the very least I, in any way whatsoever, somehow accidentally, inadvertently, started a hate group, I wouldn't continue to still dress like them if it were me. It would make me look like I still believed in their cause, and that I just couldn't talk about it because people would publicly get mad at me. If I accidentally started a hate terrorist organization, I wouldn't rebrand as a horror YouTuber the next year, and instead would try and fight that ideology as much as I could. And if I didn't do that, then it would probably be fair for people to assume that I still agreed with their actions. At one point, he posted on his subreddit and wrote, "Someone asked me about my old Boogaloo Boy persona, so I made my response and thought I'd share it to set the record straight. Again, I hate being political, but I wanted to clear this up. Love y'all. Thanks." The statement that he included with this read, "Alright, so I'll go ahead and make my official statement here, because better to come straight from me. Over 2 years ago, I was among the first to begin using the term boogaloo. Originally, it was a rendition of Che Guevara's, not that he was a good person by any means, code word for revolution, and I have always been a proponent of freedom and liberty. I believe in the divine rights of every human, and therefore, aspects of self-independence are important to me. So I began using the word in small settings, and then decided to make a meme page using the name as no one had yet done so. To give you an idea, my name was Boogaloo Boy, and several have pointed to me as being the original and started the Hawaiian shirt thing, as I've always just worn those shirts. However, as the term became mainstream, more ideas began to come into the group. Everything from Antifa members to fascists wanted in on it, and the original idea became muddled and broken. I always meant it as a for the people thing, yet it quickly became something else. To give you an idea, I watched the same news station call it a far leftist movement and a far right movement in the same day. It became something I didn't want to be a part of, and so I left. I dropped the name, took a break, and decided to talk about things I enjoyed like conspiracies and movies, under the new title, Wendigoon. It was something I acknowledge, but am not a part of anymore for what it became. Some of my current followers and friends were with me then, but I'm not a part of that anymore. So, do you remember when armed men were arrested a few years ago for planning the kidnapping of Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmire? That was the Boogaloos. Do you remember when white people showed up at the George Floyd protests and caused property damage and violence in the hopes that black people would be blamed for that? That was the Boogaloos. A great deal of their members were spotted in the Capitol during the January 6th insurrection. In 2020, they killed several police officers in a drive-by shooting in Oakland, hoping that black people would be blamed for the violence, in an attempt to create racial tension. And he doesn't believe in what that group did with his idealization of anti-government ideals, and also wants it to be very clear that he is not a political person. But to my ears, this is all conservative doublespeak.
What he's doing here is a very obvious trick. He's playing these images to invoke some sort of emotion so that people can confirm their bias. It's as simple as that. Then, he makes claims that Wendigoon takes credit for starting it as if it somehow makes him responsible for their actions. That's simply not the case. If you were to go and actually read his post and do some more exploration behind this conversation, you'd realize that Wendigoon did not actually start an alt-right organization. It was something that other people adopted from his creation and turned into something else. But you're too busy wanting to completely slander Wendigoon instead of doing proper writing or journalism. All because of what? You don't like that he has opinions on horror? Because you don't deem him qualified enough to have opinions on the same things that you like? Talk about toxic gatekeeping, dude. I don't have to make it more obvious than it already is. This individual is just envious and mad at the fact that someone like Wendigoon, despite having different beliefs, opinions, and aligns with people he disagrees with, he is just mad at the fact that Wendigoon is far more successful. And Wendigoon has also been doing this for a significantly shorter amount of time and blew up out of nowhere for similar topics and content formats. This guy has been doing it for 5 years, while Wendigoon has been doing it for 3, and the subscriber count ratio pales in comparison. Of course the envy is there. Of course it makes sense. Why wouldn't it? In fact, the whole reason this guy even made this video was as sort of a response to Wendigoon, because Wendigoon followed him on Twitter. This entire video was literally made in an attempt to try to see if he could stir the minds of these individuals to see if they would keep a level head.
Then let's see how they react to this video's existence, because I am certain they will be very level-headed about all of this. Right in the midst of this going on, a very funny thing happened, and that Wendigoon followed me on Twitter. I was not following him at the time. He never publicly told people to stop calling me a faggot. He never once reached out to me privately, but he did follow me, which means in my eyes that he 100% knew what was happening because I did tweet about it several times, and then followed me to let me know that he knew, and that he was watching and that he intended to do nothing to stop it. Why else would he follow me in that exact moment? He has never interacted with a single one of my posts. Not one like, not one comment. We are not friends. But he does follow me. He follows next to nobody on Twitter. What other motivation could he have had there to follow me in that specific moment, other than to be a method of quiet and deniable intimidation? What other way could that have been read from my perspective? If you think it was entirely coincidental, which he may argue it was, then I've got a sack of magic beans I'd like to sell to you. That was the moment that pushed me over the edge to make this video.
Ironically enough, he accomplished just that and pissed off a lot of people with the next things that I'm about to cover. And despite that, he actually received a pretty decent response back by the people he criticized. They didn't go as extreme as he thought he would. They were actually pretty tame in regards to how this guy completely misrepresented and slandered them. It makes more sense when you actually dig into his motivations that he lays out in the video a bit more. When he starts complaining about the fact that he isn't making enough money on YouTube and can hardly pay his rent because of people having opinions on his content, all through Twitter.
This meme of an idea has directly impacted my work, my sense of self, and the videos that I am able to make, and I don't really think that that's fair. There was a month last year where I only made $500 in ad revenue. I can't live off that. The amount of times that I've almost had to stop making videos since then has been almost monthly. I've barely been able to keep this afloat. I've paid my rent late most months for the past year. The cruel and untrue things that you say about another person do in fact have direct impacts on them and the way that people culturally see them. It's why I've pushed my Patreon so much in the past year, even though I know it's annoying as fuck to do. Because it is literally the only resource that is keeping this thing going after what happened.
I also have to point out that some of the things he says ring some pretty hefty alarms. I don't think it's fair. I've paid my rent late. The cruel things people say. It sounds like a bunch of excuses for not being responsible or rational about your way of life. Matter of fact, why not just get a job then? Why focus on YouTube? Only $500 in revenue for a month, maybe consider living within your means. These are all things people like this hate hearing, by the way. I mean, look at that jacket he's wearing. I bet you that thing was not cheap. The most ironic thing in all of this are when he says shit like this.
It is still going on to this day. It keeps happening, continuing to mutate and escalate to where now people are openly making fun of me about The Hills Have Eyes to my face, in spite of being totally detached from the reality of what was even said in that video. They don't even treat me like a person. Recently, I said something related to the Cherokee on Twitter near where I live, which is something we are going to get to here in a little bit. And somebody said to me, "Hi, I live in Oklahoma and am a Native American. Go fuck yourself." Like, what do I even do with that? I've never once in my life said something negative about Native Americans, but there are a whole group of people who treat me with open hostility over a perceived belief that I said something awful, when all I did was talk about something that somebody else had said.
The cruel things people say, preconceived notions. Okay, so you acknowledge that saying baseless things with no information to go off is extremely damaging, right? If you knew all this, then why would you go and do the same thing to other people? Are you seriously that blinded by envy and vitriol? The irony only grows more when we get to the part of his Wendigoon slander piece where he starts hating on him because of the people he associates with, then starts blatantly misrepresenting everyone he name drops.
He is friends with Buckingham, a gun YouTuber who has been accused of threatening rape. He is friends with Oompaville, a gun-obsessed content creator that has taken advantage of Nakado Avocado's mental decline for fame and for money, and on top of that has made content with the human trafficker Andrew Tate. He is friends with Mutahar, who argued against Andrew Tate being deplatformed from social media websites, and has recently showcased a great deal of transphobia in his most recent video.
More notably, Buckingham and Mutahar. First, for Buckingham, he labeled him as a gun YouTuber, then said he was accused of threatening rape. That's not correct by any means at all. This was a rumor spread by Sneeko, an actual so-on-so far-right individual, if you want to call him that, during the Cuck drama in an attempt to discredit Brandon. This was proven to be a lie. Second, he called Mutahar transphobic, when that could be absolutely further from the case, all because of the thumbnail drama, amongst plenty of other things that were outright wrong. It's funny that you complain about not earning money on YouTube because you keep getting dragged through the mud for bad takes and misrepresentation, yet you willingly make this mistake on purpose by misrepresenting people, as well as claiming things about them based on baseless preconceived notions because you did no research. It's also disgusting that you use that particular photograph of Brandon with his grandpa instead of maybe just showcasing his channel or any other post. Oh wait, doing that would have destroyed your narrative on the spot. All it takes is actually viewing the people you're talking about and doing some research to get your claim straight. What's funny is that this dude genuinely complains for a chapter of his video in regards to Twitter lighting his ass up in regards to a video essay he wrote. He complains about Twitter just dogging him over and over. Talks about how people didn't actually watch his video or dig into what he talked about. He does this, yet instead of learning a valuable lesson and preventing this from happening in regards to himself, as he preaches as well, not allowing ourselves as individuals to make this mistake, instead of knowing better because he's experienced it, he does it anyways, in a significantly worse regard. To add to this, people are also telling him to delete Twitter because it's clear that it affected the way he produced content. And honestly, I agree. He should delete Twitter because you'd only come up with any of these conclusions you made purely off biased misinformation that circulates on Twitter. You misrepresent all these people and talk all of this mess on them because of a personal vendetta over your channel performing poorly. This entire video wasn't about movies, as you so claim in your title or description. It's a hit piece about everything you feel you were entitled to that others have and you don't. You're a disingenuous fraud who makes terrible videos and sucks at writing. That's why your videos failed, because you're talentless. That's the cold, hard truth. It's no secret what this video is. I'm gonna say this before he gets a chance to come out with it. I guarantee you that he's gonna come out and say something like, I titled it like that on purpose and did certain things on purpose so I can prove a point or maximize views. I wore this Hawaiian t-shirt on purpose so people can call me out on my claim that Wendigoon wears them all the time to represent an alt-right organization. Anyways, rambling aside, people like this dude really piss me off because they really don't provide anything of value. Their takes are incredibly surface level or unoriginal because they just use Twitter, Google, or other forums, then take those opinions and analysis on things and pretend it's their own. That's really all they are. Bland information with fake creativity, disguised under a mask of being oh so enlightened and clever. Anyone can make this trash form of content at any point with enough time and compiled rhetoric. You're not special. That being said, I genuinely think that this individual should delete his video and issue an apology to the people he badly misrepresented. It's genuinely the only way he can recover and gain some sort of respect back. Wendigoon even reached out and apologized for following this dude on Twitter, which funnily enough, again, was actually the reason this dude made this video. Furthermore, by the end of Wendigoon's statement, he hoped the best for this guy despite all the terrible assessments that were made, yet there has been jack shit in return. It really just goes to show the type of character these people have and the lack of integrity. It's clear that he jumped the gun, thought what every other breadtube creator thinks, I'm a victim, but I'm also better than this person, then ran with his train of thought to make the worst hit piece on YouTube without checking his ego for potentially getting information wrong. Again, dude, just issue an apology, delete the video, and move on. But honestly, I don't think you're going to be on Ethan's level where you reveal the type of person you are and can somehow still get away with performing well on YouTube. This is genuinely a way to leave a foul taste in everyone's mouths for the next months to come, which will ultimately make anything else you post be held to incredible scrutiny, and you will just keep running into the same issues you complained about. If you don't like the criticism, stop doing things. It's that simple. That's really all I got. While I could make an entire deconstruction piece on this entire video, I'm focusing on the key things of this mess, because I want it to be known just how backward these breadtube personalities can be. Again, and again, I am not political by any means. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of a non-caring centrist who could care less about politics, but still supports things on the left and right. But the people who make their personalities pro-left or pro-right or anti-left or anti-right in tandem are incredibly toxic individuals who usually always have some terrible personality trait, and I always want to call that out. However, if anyone does want to see a full deconstruction video, I assure you that there is genuinely nothing worth going after this guy for that wasn't heavily emphasized in this video already. If you do want an additional video, then get this to 1,000 likes. There's probably a lot of things I missed, and all of you are more than free to correct me on the record, provide insight, or contest my argument. That being said, I'm tired. These videos take a lot of time to make. Later. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna add this at the end of this video because I might as well be a part of the video now, but let's rewind real quick. So this morning, as soon as I got finished writing and recording this video, he actually dropped a statement, a thread on Twitter. Let's read what it says. A thread about the last few days. Many people have said very fair criticism of me and my work that I did not appropriately portray people and would like to address that. To Brandon, I do need to apologize to you for two things. The first, you are right, it was wrong for me to use that picture. I included it to show that you and Wendigoon had a closeness. There are other images I could have used to demonstrate that. For that, for what it is worth, I genuinely am sorry. And honestly, no, you're not sorry. You're just saying you are so that you can deflect criticism, which is going to come your way anyways. The second is I did not do my due diligence when looking into allegations against you. To be honest, I saw pictures of you with Turkey Tom, with Donut Operator, with Wendigoon, with Brandon Herrera, and often with a gun in your hand, so I wrote you off. I did not feel you were worth my time, and that was a result of the company you keep. Ultimately, that is a failing on me though, and how I presented that. You know what? That's extremely funny. You did not feel he was worth your time, and that it is a failing on you. Okay, if you are a writer, a researcher, and you go actively make videos on things to criticize them, and if you make videos on people to criticize them as well, which this video was, why did you not bother to do the research? Why did you just straight up assume that he was something he's not? That's not something that you just fail on. That is a huge oversight that would be negligent in many other environments. I don't understand why you think that you would be above researching somebody. Nobody is above researching anybody. That's how you get people right. That's how you get stories right. He further says, "You using homophobic language to me though and calling me a low testosterone freak does not change my opinions about you. My base thoughts remain the same even though I should have said them differently and not let that cloud my writing." Well, that would have been a good realization to come to a long time ago, before you even began writing this video. On top of that, Brandon didn't use homophobic language against you. Right now, you're just using loaded language and attempting to paint someone again something that they're not. It's like you're apologizing for things people have called you out for, yet at the same time, you're doubling down on something you're blatantly wrong on. Also, he says, "To Mutahar, your thumbnail art was transphobic. I have nothing else to say that, okay? Then explain why. If you are somebody who's so capable of understanding art and its intentions and understand that there are meanings behind art and that art can be twisted in many different ways, as you said in your fucking video, if you're such an intellectual and morally superior individual, then why can't you comprehend that it's just art and that there is nothing else behind it just being a funny depiction of someone who deserves to be parodied?" The irony only increases the more he gets into his apology, if you could even call it that. "I always try to do my best. I dropped the ball here in how I presented this. My heart was in the right place. I try to live my life with integrity. If you have watched me for a long time, I hope you know this." Well, that's clearly not the case at all. Your heart was definitely not in the right place because you went out of your way to slander somebody, to slander multiple people, misrepresent them, and outright use misinformation against them for the sake of, what, a vendetta? Because that's basically all this video is. You are literally complaining about people that you don't like because you guys have different opinions. You said you always try to do your best, but I could literally name high schoolers that could do research better than you. I could name middle schoolers that could do research better than you. This wasn't just dropping the ball. This was utter failure in every regards. And it's funny how you mention integrity despite having zero informational integrity, something that several people have done significantly better than you, including Wendigoon himself. Anyways, let's read the rest of this absolute garbage because I promise you it just gets worse. "I will always believe in trying to do the right thing and standing up to things that I do not believe in. I was overcome with anger because I think it is incredibly dangerous that there is a man in horror that you cannot criticize without being called an F-slur for days on end. I think that is a very serious issue. You want to know what's dangerous? Not this person who makes content in regards to other horror. Not this person who has a fan base that will just so happen to behave in this way. After all, people can't really control their fans. I mean, look at H-Bomber guy. I'm pretty sure he's someone that you align with, and he's criticized people in the past, and look where that went. What's dangerous is not being able to not criticize somebody, which you can, by the way, as long as you do it in good faith and properly construct an argument. What's dangerous is that you are misrepresenting people with the most egregious information that you can't even prove to be correct. And you don't even address any of this information that you actually dropped. You double down. Anyways, but I did let that anger at this affect my overall quality in the presentation of these events. I still think that it is dangerous, I still think it should be talked about, but I should have worked at this to make my thoughts more clear and professional. Oh, you don't say. So now you're coming to that conclusion, after you realize that you severely fucked up and people are coming after you. That makes a whole fuck tons of sense. I also think it is telling that the bulk of what I said has not actually been addressed at all, and that many criticisms were instead about details that I got wrong, such as the nature of Brandon's work. I feel like it is important to note even if I was off in some details. Okay, look, the reason people are criticizing you, the reason some people are actually coming after you, despite viewing your video and actually knowing the contents of your video, isn't because you got some details wrong. It's because you blatantly lied and misconstrued people and their information and their history. You said things in regards to people that is simply not true and painted them out to be something they're not. You weren't just off on those details, you completely misrepresented and slandered these guys. On top of that, he says, "Mentally, I have grown very tired of conservatives picking apart my work for 2 years. I am worn down. I let my emotions get the best of me. But the core idea in this needed to be addressed. But this was beneath me. This was a product that began with the hills have eyes ultimately." Okay, look, if this video was beneath you, if this product was beneath you, why did you make the video? Why did you even bother to do any of this? Well, aside from his blatant answer, we do know why he did this. It's because he wanted to dunk back on on conservatives because they spent the last 2 years picking apart his videos, or so he says. He did it so that he could punch back on people he disagrees with, despite never actually having anything to do with the quality of his work. As a matter of fact, I find it appalling that he's using his mental status and the way that he was afflicted by these individuals to sort of defend and excuse his lack of talent and integrity. Look, this isn't something you just do. This isn't something you create. You don't make this type of failure because you're mad at somebody. You only create something so poorly researched, written, and executed if you yourself lack talent. So saying that these other people were somehow responsible because of the mental afflictions they created on you is absolutely bullshit. You should just own up to the fact that you lack talent, which is why you're significantly less successful than Wendigoon, something that you're obviously envious about. I made this video to say that even if Wendigoon did not harbor hate, that his base was made of it and that he was comfortable making money from that. And I think that point stands true and has now been proven, and it is now time to end this. Okay, how has that been proven? Can you provide a significant amount of evidence to your arguments? Can you prove your claim, please? Because you claim to be this amazing writer. You claim that you hold yourself to this writing integrity. Yet despite that, every single time at every turn when you want to present a thesis or a subject or an argument, you provide nothing to back it. You're just speaking out of your ass. Today, I will be taking that section down for my video. I will be gone for a month while I recharge and work on projects at a slower pace. I thought this was important to talk about. I still do, but the way I went about it was beneath the normal standard that I hold myself. As to my audience, I apologize for that. Okay, no, you didn't just go beneath your normal standard you hold yourself to. You completely misrepresented and lied about people. This isn't just something you do and make beneath your normal standard. That's just a poor excuse at saying that you didn't do your research and you failed to actually live up to your own expectations, which, again, you shouldn't even have because you're incapable of living up to them in any way, shape, or form. If you felt that you have been mischaracterized, that was not my intention, and I genuinely am sorry. There are ways to talk about this that could have been more professional, and as with anything in life, I'll use this to learn and always do better. Okay, well, that's just an outright lie. If it was not your intention to mischaracterize these individuals, then why did you cherry pick certain pieces of information, certain pieces of media to specifically paint this picture against these individuals? You knew what you were doing. As a matter of fact, you still know what you were doing. You still know what you are doing. This entire statement just then contradicts pretty much everything that you've been saying in this entire thread, because you said it wasn't your intention to mischaracterize people, but you blatantly only apologize for things that are irrelevant to what you actually slandered Brandon for and other individuals. You even said that you hold firm by your beliefs, so what are you actually trying to say here? And here's how he ends it off. I care so much about horror. It is my life, and I grew tired and scared of seeing hate growing on the fringe of something I care so deeply about. Horror is about kindness. Horror is about love. Until next time. Okay, but at the end of this, none of this had to do with horror in any way, shape, or form. You literally had a chip on your shoulder because you got criticized over some absolute filth and garbage that you dropped. Because it was filth and garbage. The video you made was terrible. You misrepresented these people for what? Because your life is horror? If your life is horror, then maybe you're not too far off the mark if this is how you're actively living your life day by day, thinking about petty internet drama. You know what? I don't even want to talk about this individual anymore. He's honestly so annoying. I don't think I've ever been as sort of, I want to say, heated about an argument or about internet drama until now, because the way that these type of people quickly come out of the woodworks just to say the most egregious things about people shows that you really can't trust a lot of these YouTubers that you think are good people on the internet, because one way or another they can either completely misrepresent you if they coexist in the same platform that you do, or they will outright fucking lie about you to try to detract from your success, to try to take from you and bring unto themselves what they never earned. All of that being said, yeah, this guy really sucks. The way he misrepresented people and just straight up lied about information to only benefit what he believes just goes to show that a lot of people here are actually incredibly irresponsible with information, especially these people that are sort of leaning in this sort of sphere that he's a part of, with Brett too being in talking about media in a political sort of form. Anyways, that's really all I got for today. Later.